When Mr. Bixby came home for lunch, the first thing he noticed was that the house was gone. Luckily, one of the neighbors was able to tell him which way it went. So there's a real tragedy brewing in this story because, well, this happens to people, doesn't it? When a father, let's say, comes home from work and finds that the locks have been changed and his wife is gone with the kids. And the question is exactly what happened. And the answer is invariably there was a terrible dragon in the house that could have hypothetically been attended to when it was still small, but that was ignored studiously by all who were involved and grew to the point where it dominated the entire house so that everything became cataclysmically difficult. And then it ran off with the house itself. And the man comes home and the house is gone, so to speak, because the dragon ran away with it. And his response is, I never saw it coming. And the first question that you might ask about that kind of response is, maybe that's because you didn't look, right? There were warning signs of 1,000 different kinds making themselves manifest in 1,000 different directions, parts of the dragon scattered all over hell and all over hell's half acre, but never underestimate the insistence that someone who does not want to see brings to bear on the maintenance of their blind delusion. And so Mr. Bixby's house ran away because he wasn't paying enough attention to what was going on inside it. Mr. Bixby got in his car and went looking for the house. He studied all the houses as he drove along. Finally, he saw one that looked familiar. Billy and Mrs. Bixby were waving from an upstairs window. Mr. Bixby climbed over the dragon's head, onto the porch roof, and through the upstairs window. How did this happen? Mr. Bixby asked. It was the dragon, said Billy. There is no such thing, Mother started to say. There is a dragon, Billy insisted, a very big dragon, and Billy patted the dragon on the head. Okay, so now I want to tell another story that's associated with this. So this is from the Exodus narrative. Near the end of it, the Exodus narrative, this is the story of Moses leading the Israelites away from tyranny through the desert to the promised land, and it extends over a number of Old Testament books, Exodus, Numbers, and Leviticus, if I remember correctly. This story takes place when the Israelites are just on the cusp of their movement from the desert to the promised land. So they go from tyranny, which is the rigidity, let's say, that Mrs. Bixby makes manifest in this story, to the desert, which is a descent into chaos, before moving towards the promised land, which is the better future. Now, it's the fact of the intermediary desert that makes the tyrant who won't awaken, that motivates the stubbornness of the tyrant who won't awaken. Mrs. Bixby doesn't want to contend with the dragon because she would have to abandon some of her presuppositions about the state of the household and the world, and that would throw her into a state of at least temporary confusion and perhaps serious confusion. So you don't go from conviction to new learning like this. You go from conviction to chaos and confusion to new learning, and the fact of the intermediary chaos and confusion is enough to dissuade people from attending, let's say, to the dragons when they make themselves manifest. Okay, so the Israelites are on the cusp of moving to the promised land. They're close to getting where they're close to finishing the voyage in the manner that's been promised, but they lose faith and they get whiny and complain and they get bitter and resentful, and they lose faith in the voyage forward to the promised land, and they carp and complain, and they criticize Moses, and they turn away from the divine intuition that's leading them forward. And because of that, God sends poisonous snakes to bite them. Now, poisonous snakes are dragons, for all intents and purposes. Their bite is the bite of fire, although fire is also a predator. And so the emergence of the poisonous snakes is a narrative representation of the manifestation of dragons in consequence of the Israelites' faithlessness. And so their refusal to walk the proper path dooms them to encounter with the poisonous serpents. Okay, so now there's poisonous serpents, let's call them small dragons, everywhere, and they're getting bit, and that's not good. And so they go to Moses because they know he has a pipeline to the divine, and they say, we know you can talk to God, and we're sick and tired of being bit by these poisonous snakes, and we're willing to do what's necessary to deal with them. We're willing to do what's necessary to put us back in God's good graces. Maybe you could ask him to call off the snakes. And so Moses has a chat with God, and God, who sent the snakes, decides that he's not going to get rid of them. Instead, he does something very unexpected. He asks the Israelites to gather all their bronze together, like they gathered gold together in an earlier episode to make the golden calf, which they drunkenly and orgiastically worship. They gather all their bronze together, and they're to cast a stake like Moses' staff, a tree, a flagpole, a center of the world, a foundation pole, and to put a serpent on it, cast in bronze, that's large enough so that the Israelites can see it at some distance. And then, so they're to cast that, and then they're all to go look at it. And if they look at it, then they won't be affected by the poison. And so the Israelites all go, they gather up their bronze, and they cast this staff, tree, flagpole, and they put a serpent on it, and they all look at it voluntarily, and in consequence, they're no longer affected by the poison. So the snakes don't disappear, but now the Israelites are fortified enough so that they're immune from the poison. And then that's a symbol, that stake with a serpent wrapped around it. It's a symbol of healing. It's the staff of Asclepius. It's the symbol that pharmacists and physicians use. And the upshot of the story is that voluntary confrontation in measured doses with what might otherwise poison you, strengthens and redeems you.